child's body disappeared from the morgue. Not stolen, not misplaced, just gone. No autopsy, no cause of death, no trace. And he wasn't the only one. In a small Brazilian town, boys started vanishing. Some came back mutilated. Others never came back at all. Locals whispered about rituals. Police blamed drifters. But behind it all was something far more chilling. A cult led by a woman who claimed God is a scam, Jesus is an alien, and boys born after 1980 are evil. And the worst part? She walked free. This is the story of Valentina de Andrade and the superior universal alignment, and how a red bicycle, a missing corpse, and a trance caught on tape exposed one of the darkest child murder cases in Brazilian history. You've probably heard of cults. They usually start small. A charismatic leader, some fringe beliefs, a few lonely people looking for purpose. But this one was different. It called itself Superior Universal Alignment, sometimes Superior Universal Lineage. And unlike most cults, it wasn't hiding in a cabin or a commune. It spread quietly, globally. Founded in Argentina, rumored branches in Holland, and by the early 1990s, it had slipped into the heart of Brazil, embedding itself in small towns where no one was looking. Altamira was one of them. But here's the twist most people miss. Altamira wasn't the only place where kids started vanishing. Another town, hundreds of miles away, would later raise disturbing questions about how far this cult actually reached. We'll get there. But first, Altamira, a sleepy farming town in northern Brazil. Quiet, overlooked, completely unprepared for what was coming. Because within a few years, it would become ground zero for one of the most grotesque child murder cases in the country's history. And at the center, one woman with a belief that some children didn't deserve to live. Her name was Valentina de Andrade, not a preacher, not a theologian, a self-proclaimed clairvoyant, and something else, too. Wanted. Long before Altamira made headlines, her name had already surfaced in Argentina and Uruguay, tied to whispers of ritualistic child killings. No charges stuck, no evidence held, but the rumors followed her. In 1981, at age 50, she claimed she received a message, not from God, but from something else. That same year, she published a book, God, the Great Scam. Inside, she laid out a new religion. God, fabricated. Jesus, extraterrestrial. And boys born after 1981? Not human, not innocent, but unconscious instruments of a false god. In her eyes, evil. That belief became gospel within her circle. But here's what made it dangerous. She didn't scream it from podiums. She whispered it, calmly, with conviction. And to her followers, it didn't sound crazy. It sounded sacred. She spoke of alien truths, intergalactic warnings, a salvation only they could access. And slowly, her words became law. Her law became fellowship. And that fellowship became a cult. From Argentina to Brazil and beyond, people followed her, not because they were brainwashed, but because she made them feel chosen, as if they alone understood what the rest of the world refused to see. That's how it spread, into the farms, into the churches, into Altamira, and that's where the horror began. Altamira wasn't the kind of place that made headlines. A farming town, dusty streets, kids on bikes, a place where everyone knew your face and your secrets. Until the late 1980s, when the boys began to disappear. One vanished while buying bread, another while helping herd cattle. A shoeshine boy left his tools on the sidewalk and never came back. At first, people whispered. Police shrugged. They blamed runaways, accidents. But then the bodies started appearing, and they didn't just die. They were emasculated, their genitals horrifically removed. Some were dumped near wells, others deep in the woods. One child staggered back alive, barely, bleeding, dazed, unable to speak. Another needed dozens of surgeries to undo what had been done to him. But the moment everything changed, a corpse, a confirmed victim, sent to the morgue, and then gone. No autopsy, no report, no explanation, just vanished. How does a child's body disappear from a government facility? The town's fear became suffocating. Doors stayed locked. Children stopped playing outside. Police arrested a drifter. He died in custody. They floated theories: organ trafficking, black market buyers. Experts tore those ideas apart. The truth was darker. Behind the scenes, a chilling theory took hold. The disappearances followed a pattern. The murders weren't random. They were ritualistic. Someone, or something, was selecting these boys, marking them, and deciding they didn't deserve to live. And Altamira was only the beginning. This wasn't a tragedy. It was a pattern. Over 4 years, boys, ages 8 to 14, vanished. Always after brief, unremarkable encounters. A stranger, a red bicycle, a man asking for help. One left work for 5 minutes. Another never returned from the fields. Their names were Ailton, Jerdali, Jens, Flavio, Klebson. One by one, they were found. Some weren't. The ones recovered didn't look like they died quickly. They had been emasculated. One bore bite marks. Another, his genitals removed. A child had his eyes removed. Another, his hands. But it was the sameness that disturbed investigators the most. These weren't crimes of passion. They were acts of design, carried out with precision. Even the survivors told nearly identical stories. A man approaches, a sudden blackout, a smell, a sting, a blur, then pain, then darkness, then nothing. And when they woke up, something was missing. As police connected the cases, one name kept rising from the rubble: Superior Universal Alignment. But it wasn't just cult fanatics in robes. It was doctors, military police, businessmen, men of medicine, men of law, men with power and money, allegedly paying for these rituals. They believed boys born after 1981 were evil, possessed, disposable. This wasn't fringe belief. This was institutional. It wasn't on the edge of the town. It was inside it. In the hospitals, in the police force, in the gated homes on the hill, protected by silence, enabled by fear. And at the center of it all, the same woman, the same book, a doctrine that said these boys were not human, and a cult willing to act on it. For years, the case sat in limbo, files collecting dust, leads evaporating, parents burying their children without answers. Only rumors. Then, in 1993, a new investigator opened the Altamira files. His name was Ada Moro, and what he found confirmed the town's worst fears. The missing children? Not random. The murders? Not isolated. They were ritualistic, calculated, tied to an ideology and a group that believed they were carrying out a mission from beyond this world. Witness after witness pointed to the same name: superior universal alignment. But this time, police didn't just listen. They acted. Raids, warrants, searches across multiple homes and hideouts. What they found looked like something left behind after a séance or an exorcism. Black hoods, strange videotapes, books outlining a new cosmology, symbols, drawings, ritual, instructions. One tape, in particular, made national headlines. It showed Valentina de Andrade, sitting, still, her eyes glassy, her voice flat. Investigators claimed they heard her say, "Kill little children." That phrase echoed across Brazil. News anchors repeated it. Courtroom transcripts printed it. Nightmares absorbed it. But then, experts stepped in, said the line was misheard. What she actually said: "Yes, but there are more experienced little children." If that sounds worse, you're not wrong. Whether it was a slip, a trance, or something else, the message was clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a system. 7 suspects were indicted: doctors, policemen, landowners, and at the center of it all, Valentina de Andrade, charged as the intellectual architect of the murders. But she wasn't arrested. She walked free until trial. And when she finally entered the courtroom, the justice system met its own reckoning. By 2003, it had been over a decade since the first boy vanished. And finally, a trial. Belém, the capital of Pará. 17 days. A media circus. Outside the courthouse, families held photos. Faces of boys who would never grow up. Inside, 7 defendants sat in silence. Among them, the woman who started it all, Valentina de Andrade. She didn't look like a monster. She looked like someone's grandmother, neatly dressed, calm, tired eyes, folded hands. But prosecutors weren't fooled. They called her the ideological engine behind one of the worst child crimes in Brazilian history. They said her teachings didn't just inspire violence, they enabled it. Her followers believed what she wrote, and what they believed, they acted on. The co-defendants were just as chilling. 2 doctors accused of castrating the boys, a military police officer who protected the cult, a wealthy businessman's son who lured boys in, and the businessman himself accused of orchestrating the rituals. Evidence was presented. Books, tapes, witnesses, patterns. But there was a problem. No forensic link between Valentina and the crimes. She claimed she wasn't even in Altamira during the years it happened. Produced documents, denied everything, called her book philosophy, said she never told anyone to act on it. Then came the verdict. 6-1. Not guilty. Valentina fainted. Her supporters cheered. Outside, the families screamed, cried, protested. She walked out the front door, free, but her followers didn't. The doctors were sentenced, 35 to 77 years. The others too. And yet, it didn't feel like justice. Because the woman who created the belief system, the one who said boys were evil, faced no real consequences. And the question echoed across Brazil: how can the mastermind walk while the believers pay the price? The trial ended, but justice never came. Valentina de Andrade walked free. The others were sentenced. But something felt wrong. The courtroom only acknowledged 5 victims. 3 murdered, 2 assaulted. That's it. But the families? They counted 19. 19 boys, gone between 1989 and 1993. And they weren't guessing. They had names, faces, memories no verdict could erase. So why weren't those cases included? Because the investigation had been broken from the start. Crime scenes weren't secured. Bodies weren't examined. Evidence vanished. One victim was confirmed, identified, tagged, then taken to the morgue, and disappeared. Gone. No follow-up. No explanation. A child's corpse. Erased. Who do you blame for that? No one was held accountable. Some called it incompetence. Others, a cover-up to protect the powerful. Because the accused weren't just cultists. They were doctors, military, businessmen, men with influence, men with connections, men whose faces didn't belong on mugshots. And in the end, most of the victims never made it to court, never had their names read aloud, never saw justice, just silence, and a verdict that still stings. When the mastermind walks free and the dead are forgotten, was it ever about justice at all? Some of the boys survived, but they didn't come back whole. Not in body, not in mind. Their names were Joseph, Othniel, and Waldickley. Children, each abducted, each subjected to severe mutilation and abuse, each left for dead. Othniel, just 10 years old, would spend years in and out of hospitals, surgeries, therapy, silence, and the most haunting part, he still lives in Altamira, walks the same streets, breathes the same air, knowing the people who did this or helped cover it up might still be out there. The survivors told their stories. Some made the news. Others stayed hidden in documentaries, whispers, nightmares. And one detail kept coming back. A red bicycle. More than one boy remembered it. A man riding it, smiling, friendly, until he wasn't. One child said there were many men. Another only remembered a smell. Sharp, chemical, then nothing. That's what trauma does. It erases. It fractures time. It protects you by hiding you from the truth. But what it doesn't erase is pain, the shame, the silence. Some survivors said they blamed themselves, as if they had done something wrong. Some can't form relationships. Others still have flashbacks because the violence didn't stay in the woods. It followed them into therapy, into adulthood, into every quiet moment that suddenly didn't feel safe. And what made it worse? For decades, no one asked what it felt like. They only asked, "Do you remember who did it?" But maybe the more important question is, how do you live after something like that? You'd like to think you'd never fall for something like this. That if someone told you Jesus was an alien, that boys were evil, that salvation came from the stars, you'd laugh, walk away, call it crazy. But people don't join cults because they're stupid. They join because they're searching for meaning, for certainty, for someone to tell them the world makes sense. Superior universal alignment didn't begin with murder and emasculations. It began with promises. A woman offering clarity, a community offering purpose, a belief system that said, "You are chosen. You see what others can't." And once that belief takes hold, obedience follows. then silence, then complicity. And here's the part no one wants to hear. Altamira might not be the only place. Years later, in Paraná, a boy named Evandro Ramos Caetano was taken, murdered, and the name that surfaced again? Superior Universal Alignment. Same ideology, same rituals, same questions left unanswered. So maybe this isn't just a story about one cult. Maybe it's about the spaces we create. When people feel lost, and who's waiting to fill them. Because cults don't survive without followers. And followers don't follow monsters. They follow clarity. They follow certainty. They follow someone who promises they're special, and that everyone else is blind. And by the time the blood starts to spill, it's too late to tell the difference. So here's the real question. If you were born in the right town, at the wrong time, to the wrong people, would you have known? Or would you have followed? Most people never hear these names. Most stories like this fade away. But not if you're watching. Subscribe. And don't let the next one disappear.